Welcome to the Late Game Podcast, a podcast about all things board gaming, from rolling dice to painting minis and everything in between. I'm your host, Tyler, and with me is Kenneth.
What up?
And Russ.
How are you?
Doing well. So, the response from our last episode has been pretty awesome. We've had a lot of new listeners and even some support from a publisher. So first of all, I'd like to say thanks to the crew at Plaid Hat Games for sharing our episode on their Facebook, and it's people like the guys at the Plaid Hat company that make this hobby such a great one to be involved in. So once again, thanks guys. And I'd also like to plug the TimpCon 2019, which is upcoming this weekend. It'd be this Friday, October 18th, and Saturday, October 19th, at the Utah Valley Convention Center in downtown Provo, Utah. So if you'd like to come out and play some games, you can still get tickets. I believe you can get them by going to timpcon.com or just checking out the event on tabletop.events. So come out and stay up with the late game. So what have you guys been up to lately as far as playing anything or researching? I think you mentioned something earlier on, Russ, about what you've been dipping into.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've had someone that's been begging me to DM for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, it's only been a few years.
And so finally decided I'm going to jump in and try this DM thing. So I've been watching a lot of Critical Role, reading, doing all kinds of stuff to DM, and I am super excited. I don't know if I'm going to be the best DM, but I have a lot of ideas.
So the thing is, for your first one, you're not going to be the best DM, but every single session, you will get better. And, you know, if we do like a campaign where either there's a storyline that you have in mind that we do, or if we play and get our characters up to a certain level, and then we decide to, let's refresh, the next campaign will be better. Like there's absolutely a skill. Being a good DM to me, and I've only done a little bit of DMing and quite poorly. I look at being a good DM as one of those things is very much, it's a combination of a skill that needs to be honed and an art that either like comes naturally to you or that you just kind of need to let naturally flow. But it is a combination of both. There's skill to it and there's art to it.
Yeah, I want to have an end goal in mind, but I want you guys to be able to do anything, and then I kind of not really refresh, but kind of re-gauge at the end of the story of how I can still get to where I want. Yeah. I want to make sure I have pretty much in my mind, I want to have a full world in mind of the monsters and everything. And then whatever you guys do will interact that way.
Yeah. There's going to be a gang of murder hobos just pillaging this beautiful world that you're creating, taking your story off the rails, frustrating you to no end, and all of the laughs and good times will be had.
And that's one thing that I've been realizing. I don't want to put too many rails on, is in the sense of, I want them to do this. I want to be like, well, this is the quest. Whatever they do for this session, we'll just steer it back one way or another, or not really even steer it away, but like it can be way out, but you just have to do this, and you guys kind of.
And I know that I've mentioned it to you. I want to say that maybe it was talked about on the show, but I know that I've mentioned to you that like the ability to hide the rails is really important. Like you can have something be totally on rails and have it feel very free to your players if you are good at hiding the rails. And that can ease a lot of the stress of like totally improvising constantly, because to fully improvise a lot of stuff, you've got to have like an encyclopedic knowledge of D&D world, if we're going into, if we're going through a forest and you're thinking, all right, I've got, these forest animals, I've got like a pack of wolves and maybe a wild boar that they're going to run into. And then we decide, oh, hey, what's that over there? And you go, oh, there's a cave. And then we dive into that cave and you're not ready for cave monsters.
Right.
That makes things a little bit harder. But the more you play and the more you DM and the more you research, the bigger that knowledge base will grow, and the more you can improvise, and the more the rails can either be hidden or just gone.
Right. I kind of see it as, and maybe I'm trying to take too much on here, but like if I explain this world, let's say you're going down the cavern and see all this stuff, or in a forest, wherever, anything that I explain, like you can like offshoot that way. Like I want to climb this tree, and then I'd have like kind of, all right, that tree, this is what's going to happen.
That's one of the ways that you can have the rails there is, we can ask 1,000,001 questions, but the only information that we're getting about the world is going to be through you. So as long as you don't throw something out that you're not ready to follow up, you kind of keep those rails there. You know, if you say that there's trees, you got to kind of factor in that we might want to climb them, like you said. You know, if you say that there's a cave, you've got to be ready for us to go in there. The last thing you want is to mention a cave and not be ready for us to go in there when we want to.
Yeah.
And then remember, if there's any monsters that you're planning on putting in the thing and you need a mini for it, let me know and I'll check out my vault and we'll see what we can come up with.
Oh, yeah.
And between you and I, we'll have the shit painted too.
Yeah. So I am really enjoying that right now. Still playing, like I played Gloom of Killfort this week, some Dice City, some, oh man, I don't, like, Wingspan, of course. And
weird. So weird. He played Wingspan.
Yeah, taught you guys Tapestry.
Yeah, we played Tapestry it was mine and Tyler's first time.
Yeah.
This is true.
So what did you guys think of that? I mean, I know it's a hot button topic in the gaming hobby right now.
Honestly, I felt like I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I looked at it and I didn't get it. Like I kind of followed the design diary and I was like, eh. And I looked at like the pieces and I was kind of, eh. Like it's well made. Like every bit of it is nice, but it doesn't.
There's a style to it.
Yeah, the aesthetic it doesn't do anything for me. Playing it, once things kind of clicked, it clicked really well. And I mean, I ended up outscoring you guys by like 100 points. Like I really like took off. I honestly, I'm like really torn on it because the game is really well made, but honestly, it just doesn't feel like there's a ton to explore. Having only seen in action 3 of the factions, you know, maybe there's a depth that I just don't know, but I didn't feel like where the game is kind of on rails. There's the tracks, and the tracks are always the same, and you progress down the 4 tracks. It felt like there's only so much that your faction is going to be able to do, and then there's, you know, the cards, but that's not tactical. That's more random, which is fun. Like I'm down with that. I would definitely play it again. I'm for sure down to play Tapestry again sometime, but I'm definitely not sad that I didn't buy it. And I don't intend to.
Yeah. For me, I feel like I'm very pleased with that. I really enjoy it. And I really see it as like that next step if you're a Wingspan.
Yeah, I certainly didn't feel like I was building a civilization. Like I would say that the theme is Civ Builder, not
it kind
of
felt
game.
like a reverse musical chairs. Everybody's kind of, you know, I want this first and I want this first, and you have to be the first one to get there to get it if you know you're on that track and you're trying to get that building or whatever. But I agree. I mean, the components were awesome. The gameplay was, you know, pretty smooth. I kind of feel bad because we just gave Russ shit the entire time.
That comes
to my own medicine.
to the listeners, don't know. Russ is the king of like screwing with people while they are explaining rules, and he finally got a really good dose of his own medicine.
A double dose.
And I was not bothered at that. I get bothered that when I teach a game, I usually take a round or 2 off, and I really invest way too much in if people are enjoying it, especially if it's a game I like. I'm like, I want to make sure they like it. Part of that is I've picked up from trying to teach my wife games because I'm like, oh man, I hope she likes this one. And
I can appreciate that.
so, it's kind of, and then, so my sadness was like, oh man, not that I lost, because honestly, that game, I don't worry so much about losing. It was like, I didn't do as well with this faction as I think I could have. So,
How much of that do you figure is based on like the
couple
random
of
elements?
jerks?
No, the random elements of the game.
But that's what I like.
The couple of jerks, I stomped you into the ground. That's a big part of it, is that I whooped your ass.
But I like that. I like that randomness in the sense of it's a different type of engine builder. Like in Gizmos, as an example, you choose what you get. Yeah, there might be some that come out, but you choose what you get and you use that to build. Wingspan, Tapestry, I feel like it's, hey, you're given this. How are you gonna best it?
Right.
And that's what I like, the challenge in that.
I'm down with the randomness, but I feel like the randomness is where like almost too much of the tactical space and the decision space is based on the random elements. And I don't necessarily need a game to allow me to have a game plan going into it, but Tapestry is very much one that you almost shouldn't, like, you've got the most basic outline based on your civilization. Mine specialized in the tech, and so I screamed up that track, and I really focused on tech, and it worked really well for me. But everything else, all of the, like, that's not a tactical decision. That's just kind of, all right, this is going to be my overall game plan. I didn't ever feel like I did a big thing in the game. Like, it's certainly not a game of moments. There's a whole thing, and there's an overall feel, and I mean, it's definitely good.
It's weird in the sense that, and I keep comparing it to Wingspan, and that's because I've played Wingspan so much, and for me, other than it just being a Stonemaier game, it has the same elements in the sense that there's 4 simple actions to do. What you're given dictates what are going to be the best actions, because I can't go into Wingspan as an example, or Tapestry. I can't go in and say this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to lay eggs, because you're not going to maximize your points. I know a lot of players will say, well, isn't it best to just do eggs the last 2-3 turns so that you get... No, I will say, if you're doing eggs your last 2 turns on Wingspan, you haven't built things the best that you're going to capitalize, because that's going to give you 4 or 5 points, maybe, unless you have a lot that's going to trigger on that row. And Tapestry is the same. If it didn't have that randomness, you would just go in and play the game just doing the same tracks the whole time. Because there's maybe some player interaction, but not a ton.
Yeah.
I think that specifically looking at Wingspan versus Tapestry, it's a pretty good example of the influence that hype can have and theme can have. So I think that a big part of all the hype that surrounded Wingspan was, hey, there's this really good game and it's about birds of all things. Really, birds? I've got to check this out.
Yeah.
Hey, this game was great and it's about birds and it's weird and it's different. I've never heard of a game about birds. You got to check out this game about birds. And there's like 9 million different bird cards, and every one of them's different, and they've all got unique art and little facts about the birds. And the theme was essentially, like, it blindsided you. I mean, realistically, you could take the mechanics of Wingspan and apply just about any theme to it.
It's not true.
You don't think that you could have a whole bunch of random cards that do like a couple of specific things? Some of them produce a certain resource, some of them consume a certain resource.
No, you couldn't put dinosaurs on there.
Yes, you could, absolutely. But I mean, so the skeleton of the game is, I mean, it works really well, but when you break it down to its parts, it's not a super impressive game. What's impressive is the whole package, and I think that that's what fueled the hype for Wingspan, where Tapestry, I feel like, is it's perhaps maybe it's that it feels like it's less than the sum of its parts, where you've got Jamie Stegmaier, which is a name that just brings hype to any game.
Yeah.
You've got high quality components from Stonemaier Games, which is, in part kind of a repetition of just Jamie Stegmaier.
Right.
You've got the claim that it's a Civ builder, which is inaccurate, I feel. Civ builder is the theme of this engine building game, and this action allowance and like a degree of hand management. Like there's a lot of elements to it, but none of it feels like you're building a city to me. It's definitely like that's the theme. And so there's all these things that sound great, but then the way that they're put together, it was like, oh, well, I mean, that's fine, but I can definitely see where there's been some pushback against the hype on it.
Yeah, and all his games seem to have so much hype. People want to jump on the bandwagon and not liking them.
And especially
I think if there's one problem that he's had with some of his bigger games, is I don't know how to, maybe the perception. Like, I know some people agree with you that it's not a Civ builder. I don't really get caught up in that because I can see the development of him trying to build as a Civ builder.
Like I said, I absolutely
that.
feel like Civ builder is the theme.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mechanically feel that way to me.
Yeah. And then, because I notice it with Scythe, like when I see the box of Scythe, I imagine this territory control battle game. And when I played it, it wasn't that. So I get, like, I had the same reaction that some people are having to Tapestry when I did Scythe. It was like, yeah, I didn't like it. The second time I played it, much more enjoyable, but I knew what I was getting into.
Right.
So I think his games are so, for lack of a better term, a lot of times just beautiful, and these things, you have such high expectations. If it's not near perfection, then it's terrible.
Yeah, with Scythe, for me, like, I kind of saw that same thing that it looked like it was going to be a big combat heavy game. And then I heard so much about it, I just kind of stopped looking at it altogether. And then finally playing it, now when I look at that, I very much feel like I see what it is more. Now I look at it and it's like, okay, there's farming, and it's like
it's amazing art.
The mechs are there, like it's an imminent threat, but it's just that. I mean, you look at the box art and they aren't doing anything.
An RPG for that world?
I think somebody has created something, just a fan created RPG, yeah, or a few of them, I would imagine.
You like that game, don't you?
I sure do.
You got it back to the table for me, which is impressive because I was destined to not play that. The other thing I played, even getting back on track because of Wingspan, I got Elizabeth Hargrave's new. She's a designer for Wingspan. I got her new little Kickstarter. When I say little, it came in an envelope. I was like, what is that? And it was the game. So it's just 18 cards, and then there's like a solo expansion with a few more cards.
What's the name of it?
Mussy Tussy? Tussy Mussy.
Yeah.
So
Fussy Bussy.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a fun little interesting game. She is, just with these two games, she is very talented. Like she will probably catch my eye on any game I will be interested in.
Well, and
because her mechanics
aligning
are
herself.
Clean.
Yeah.
She's a very talented designer.
Well, and aligning herself with Jamie Stegmaier was kind of a smart move.
Yeah.
If, that was her idea to begin with.
Yeah.
But, so what about you, Ken?
Tussy Mussy didn't have anything to do with them, right? That was
right.
That was Kickstarter.
Right, but I think her style mixed with Jamie's to give us Wingspan, I think, like he was a good, I'm going to assume, mentor the way Stonemaier is with their games and what they bring on.
Like, well, I mean, as much as like information as he just puts out into the world between like videos and articles and stuff, like he may have been her mentor without even realizing it.
Right.
So, but she definitely is on my radar as a top designer for me. That's not everybody, but
yeah.
Well, what have you played recently, Kenneth?
I got one of my newer Kickstarter games to the table with my wife and my sister-in-law. We played All Manner of Evil. And
Oh, that one looks rad.
yeah, it was really,
Oh,
really
you got
fun.
a Kickstarter? That's
I know,
weird.
we're crazy, huh? So it's a Cthulhu mythos. I mean, the box art has a picture of H.P. Lovecraft.
Is that your first Cthulhu game?
Yeah, yeah, that's what it is. Sure. It's God, it's not even my first Cthulhu game I've received in the last like month. But the game plays. It felt like it shared some DNA with the Bloodborne card game, which I am a big fan of, in that everyone has a handful of action cards, and the actions are kind of what you're going to do, and you all play them face down, and then you flip them over. But where Bloodborne, you're trying to attack a monster and be the one to attack it most so you can get the points. With this one, the story or whatever is that you are in this mansion. So it's all manner of evil. It's spelt like stately Wayne Manor,
Right.
not being
Manners.
polite manners.
Yeah.
Very sad I didn't back this one. Did you get the deluxe I'm imagining for $29?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm so sad right now.
So you're going around this mansion and you are stealing goods that will then that each like has a little ability on it or an effect on it, and you are like adding points to your little stack of goodies that you've stolen. And sometimes you're performing rituals to waken different great old ones. And there's some take that to it. The turn order can make things feel really harsh because every action that you play opens up 2 rooms. There's only a total of 4 rooms in the thing. So if you're playing with anything more than 2 people and everyone chooses the same card on the same turn, if you're the third person, you're not going to have an option in those rooms, So there's that. And there's, I think it was an expansion that was included in the Kickstarter. There's some monsters that can do stuff. And each player has like a unique player card with a unique goal that some people are trying to awaken a great old one. Some people are trying to get the most of a certain type of goodie.
Oh, nice.
I
love those secret goal type things.
There's quite a bit of it's hard to say depth because it's not a very like complex game at all, but there's plenty of options, plenty of variability, and
maybe it's a wide
plenty
game
that you could do. Yeah, I'd say it's definitely wider than it is deep. One thing that I would say is not super cool about it is that Colossal. I mean, I did the Kickstarter and I got all the stuff and I got a playmat because I have a neoprene addiction, and I have never been as happy to have a playmat as I was when I saw the board for this thing. It is the ugliest, most simple, like nothing at all board. It's like 4 inches by 6 inches, and then you fold that open, and there's spaces for 4 cards. There's nothing about the manor. There's no spot for the great old ones that you could awaken. The playmat has like little tracks for the rituals for the great old ones, and there's some like things that you can add to the various rooms that can like affect you, because there's like 2 resources in the game, and one of them is I want to say it's madness and then rituals. So the rituals go on to the great old ones, but you get madness, and madness can either work for you if you have the right like hidden roll, or it can work against you at the end of the game. So you can add madness to the different areas, and there's like spots for that on the playmat. And the playmat's beautiful, and it has just like everything. And this board, I look at it and it's like, oh, I'd be so mad if I didn't have the playmat. Like it's just nothing. Like it's like the ultimate cheap out on the board, and they could have. It comes in a smaller box, and they still could have fit a better board in there. I am very happy that I have the playmat, so it's not like I feel weird complaining about it because it's not an issue that I have, but if I didn't have that playmat, I would be very upset with the board.
Yeah.
But the game's really fun. I think that you guys would dig it. And I want to say you can play it up to like 5 or 6. And when you
Oh,
do,
nice.
you add like another room that just constantly gets refilled, but it costs money to use it. So if you are in that situation of someone else uses the 2 rooms that are available to you on your turn, you can go into that extra bonus room.
Nice.
So, but yeah, it's really fun. I had a good time with it.
What's the playtime on it? Is it long or?
No, I would say first time playing it, we were probably 45 minutes.
That's not bad.
First time playing, that's pretty good.
Maybe an hour. And I could see like, you know, if it became a game in regular rotation, so like if we were to play it right now, I would have to go back to the rule book and look at some things, and we'd be consulting it every so often. But if it got to be a game where I was pretty confident about the rules and I understood them, I could see knocking a game out in a half hour.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean your turns are fairly simple. It's a pretty quick little game.
The reason I ask is just I'm trying to gauge because, like I've mentioned before, my family doesn't love long games, so I'm wondering how likely is this for me to have hit the table here at home? You know, not that it wouldn't prevent me from, or it would prevent me from buying a game because it's long or not. Look, I mean, my favorite game's Anachrony, and I think the shortest time I've played that is 2.5 hours. But yeah, I just always am interested in how long a game is going to play.
Did you play anything this week?
I did. We actually got together and I traded some stuff and was able to get a Kickstarter edition of Parks.
Oh, yeah.
And and Russ had taught us that one wrong. And no, but Parks is
I've
a
only
1 to
played
5
a 2-player. A lot of those rules, like
I'm just kidding.
I think I remember playing the camera way. First time play, I remember playing that right. But the fire, fires very rarely come into play in a 2-player game.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I played it here at home as well, but Parks is a 1 to 5 player game designed by Henry Audubon, and I don't know if that's any relation to the Audubon Society or anything like that, but interesting name association there. But published by Keymaster Games, and it's a worker placement style game where you actually use 2 hikers to blaze a trail along the 59 U.S. national parks, and you start the game during the first of 4 seasons in an effort to collect memories in the form of actual parks and photos that you take along the way. And it's a fairly simple game with some of the most amazing art that I've ever seen in a game.
Yeah, if you're into like national parks, like we're here in Utah, we have a few national parks around.
Yeah.
Outdoors is kind of a big thing. Ken's always up in a tree, or used to be. Now he's in a truck.
Now I'm looking at trees.
Yeah. So that was a big theme for me, but it's gorgeous. Some of that art is just awesome.
Yeah, it is. And getting a little, the different art boards or the art prints in the games, that's a nice touch as well. It's not nice enough touch for me to want to buy 59 copies of the game to try to get all 59 arts, but no, it's cool.
There's some of the art in there. That's the one game, and I have a number of games that I like because of the art, or I purchased because of the art. That's one where I would be interested in buying prints.
Yeah.
I think that so that was a Kickstarter game, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, the theme really didn't grab me at all. Like playing it, I was impressed. I really enjoyed it. It's a good, clean, fun, fairly small, not too complex game. I think that if they didn't have it, they really missed an opportunity to have like a straight up coffee table book with all the art. They could have had the art in that game could be, I imagine it, you open the book and on the left side is the picture from the game. And then on the right side, you've got a 1 page about that park.
Yeah.
Where it is.
Well,
how many people go there, what the big attraction is, that sort of thing. And like that book, even without the game could do gangbusters because the art is that good.
I don't know if they've done a book, but they did do like a deck of cards as well. Just a deck of playing cards.
Yeah, that could be great.
I think that game, like, I think it'll do well in board game stores. Barnes & Noble has an exclusive, all I could see was it said exclusive box, but it looked a lot like our boxes, so I don't know what it was. That game will do gangbusters if they can get it in the national parks gift shops.
Yeah, that's like, where it does belong.
That would be bananas.
Because people would buy it even if they're not a gamer, because I think it will appeal and people will get this idea. What I love about the game, though, the more I play it, is it's simple. It's good to teach people to learn. I mean, it is worker placement in the sense that you go there and you do stuff, but it's kind of this resource management game I see more the more I play it.
Yeah.
And there's little combinations in there that I think help people understand bigger concepts in games. Like I'm going to take this water to fill this canteen to give me these 2 suns, and I'm going to use these 2 suns to get me this.
Yeah,
like,
you can really
fun.
snowball some stuff in that game, and it was fun. It felt like there was kind of a constant back and forth, and thinking back on it, because I had a lot of the higher value parks for scoring. Russ had just a lot of stuff, and I feel like the game clicked a little bit late for Tyler. So,
well, it's interesting.
As we were coming into the end of it, it was like I genuinely looking around. I was like, I predicted it would be between me and Russ, but it looked like it was kind of anybody's game, and I think that a combination of like timing of the parks coming out and, like I said, maybe it seemed like it clicked maybe a turn or two after, or maybe it was one of the rules that Russ didn't clarify.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, for sure. It was just,
there weren't huge rules. Come on.
Huge enough that you won the game off of them.
Yeah.
But
I left that camera for 2 rounds for one of you guys to get.
I was supposed to start with it.
Yeah. So there's
I would have taken it from you. I probably would have taken it from you sooner. I kind of left it there in the open for a while.
But like the game state toward the end of the game, I looked at it and I was like, I think maybe I'm winning. I'm not sure. Like it felt tight,
Yeah.
It wasn't.
I've noticed scores are
for everything that felt like there was, a big turn, and a big turn could kind of snowball into a couple of big turns. It never felt like someone was running away with it. Like it always felt like everyone was competitive. Everyone was still in the game.
Yeah. And by the end, I still felt like I had somewhat of a chance to at least be in the middle of the pack.
Yeah. It almost like to the opposite end of Tapestry, because about halfway through Tapestry, I was like, good luck. You guys are not catching up to me.
Well,
but with Parks,
I will say that I think that aspect of Tapestry is going to turn some people away, because it looks like you have a lead, but I've seen people close like 100-point gap, and then all of a sudden they're like, wait, I didn't win. Did you see how bad I was winning? So I've seen that. But with Parks, I don't know if you noticed this playing it again, Tyler. My first play, I was like, I'm going to visit Parks. And I didn't spend time getting canteens, and I didn't spend time getting gear.
Yeah.
But I've realized that if I spend like a round or two not visiting as many parks, which seems so odd, and getting stuff to make things better, like you can visit a lot more. Like there's the simple of just, I'm going to get these resources when I land here,
how do you
and I'm going to
think
get
camping works? Like how much camping are you going to do if you just trek off into the woods with nothing? You got to gear up to make it work better.
Yeah.
Of course you have to spend some time getting gear. That's what it's all about.
A little bit of a feel of an engine building when you do get the canteens and the gear and stuff
fun.
Like that. Yeah, and it does end up being pretty fun.
So what were your scores like?
I ended up with 36 and
52.
The next two, right? I think they were both at like 22 and 28 or something. So it was all fairly close. And my son liked it quite a bit. He liked more the little components, those little wood bits. He liked stacking those and
I gotta be honest,
he was crying with the water. And
I love the way that they wood stained those bits instead of painting them.
Yeah,
like it matches.
That's a nice touch.
I mean, the game is gorgeous. Like
The
the game is amazing.
Every single component to that game is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really, really nice.
So-
I love that the wild resource is a bunch of different animal sculpt meeples.
None of them match.
Yep.
That is
awesome.
amazing. Like,
It is cool.
Is that a Kickstarter only thing, or is that?
I don't know what was Kickstarter.
I'm
only.
interested to see
I don't know if it was
retail
just
copy.
the sleeve. I will say this: that is another game that I feel. I can't remember where I came across it, but one of those random going through Kickstarter and kind of keeping that 50 and under and more willing to kind of do some like backing. And I'm starting to get quite the shelf of those under $50 Kickstarter purchases that are just home runs. Like,
Yeah.
just really good games.
Yeah,
They're not
that's-
the big flashy,
That's kind of
$100 games, but man, those smaller Kickstarter games are so good.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at going into All Manner of Evil and Terrors of London, which I want to say were both
Yeah,
done by Colossal Micro. But those were both relatively cheap. I looked at it, I was like, they're card games. It seems like it's cool. It's got a cool theme. It's got cool art. I'll go for it, whatever. I'll spend $20. I'll spend $30. And they're great. Like there's a ton of smaller, cheaper games on Kickstarter that are amazing.
Yeah.
I just backed Ruins of Mars today.
Did
I'm
you?
hoping to get a
I'm
good
looking at it.
Mars
When does that
game.
end?
There's not really a good Mars game out there, so I'm hoping this one scratches that itch.
He hasn't played Mission Red
Oh,
Planet yet.
that's probably a good one.
But
Yeah, and he doesn't understand terraforming Mars because that game it's amazing. You really need to play it. Like, I understand both you like mini painting snobs are gonna hate
Well-
looking at it, but the game it fires on
I'll
all cylinders.
always
It
play
is
it.
such a good game.
I'm not going to be the bully of the group and say we're not playing it, but I
so when
don't love it.
does Ruins of Mars end? Fairly soon, I imagine. It's like last
6
time I
days or
checked, it was
something.
yeah.
And I was really bummed
from
because
the
I
time
went
of
in
this
today
recording.
to back the Grand Carnival because I've had my eyes on it and I just kind of waited. And it still said an hour, but there was no, like, I'm like, how do I back it? And I had missed it. I was very bummed. So,
Bummer.
especially because they're a local company. I love Grandpa Beck's games and everything. So,
Yeah, as of recording, I'm looking at Ruins of Mars and it says 7 days to go.
Cool.
So if this
See, I'm
is
just looking
coming, if this is our next episode that is coming out, you will have approximately a day if you listen to this
Yeah.
on release day.
Right. Oh no, it is one. Yeah, it'd be a day pretty much.
And-
So
and I have Entropia saved that I might back.
I'm
Sovereign Skies.
I'm really looking at Ruins of Mars. I just worry about losing control. And speaking of control, why don't we talk about area control?
Smooth. Very nice.
That's what you call a transition.
Yeah, I'm
Nice
calling it out.
job.
That was well played. I enjoyed it.
So, what is area control, or as I've also heard it called, area
Risk?
majority?
Oh, I thought it was just called Risk.
Yeah. Well, I've not played Risk, so I really wouldn't know that.
How have you- Never mind.
There's a lot of things that I haven't played yet, but
no, but that was the game when you were a kid.
I know
think it was
I went
around.
with my cousins to their friend's house to play it once, and I fell asleep before the rules even got explained. I was 12 years old, and that shit bored me.
I gotta admit, it used to be like a big game rules wise,
Yeah.
like, oh, and now it's like, oh, it's such a simple game.
Right. Well, first of all, I found that some people wouldn't consider area control and area majority the same thing, although they're very similar. The description that I found that best described area control was a more straightforward one player moves into another player's area, combat takes place, and one player is determined the controller of that area, like in a game like Scythe. And with area majority, it's a game more like Mission Red Planet, in which multiple players can reside in one area, but the player with the most game-based influence or, characters there, they would benefit first or the most. And I found it kind of interesting that the two types of games, although very similar in style, are actually quite different in the types of designs that are out there. One being a little more confrontational and the other being slightly more passive-aggressive.
But can't you? I think I kind of see them the same. I get the difference, but I guess one is more combat heavy. But you can have that option to attack, right? That's
Not
like I
in
can-
Mission Red Planet. I mean,
Yeah,
there are ways that you can take like
Yeah.
one guy out, but there are, and that's kind of the example that I think stood out for me with majority versus control.
Yeah, I think of area. So I think of area control as, you go and you do battle, and it's whoever is controlling the area, and that's kind of almost whether it be by majority or
Right.
by combat. And I think, but where the games are less about combat and generally tend to be more about the majority, I look at those and I think area influence. It's more about how much influence you have versus just sheer numbers. Because I mean, there's also, I know in a few of my favorite area majority control, even like combat heavy games, you don't necessarily have to fight while you're
Right.
in there. And having a majority doesn't necessarily have an intrinsic value either. So
Yeah.
the games where it is less combat focused, I see that as like an area influence, and then the area control is more combat heavy, and majority kind of floats between the two.
So maybe this is where the term "dudes on a map" game comes from, because it
See-
kind of covers both of them,
Yeah.
right? It kind of
But see, I've also heard people describe like Zombicide as a dudes on a map game because there's a shit ton of dudes and they're on a map.
yeah, but I
I
don't see it as a map though. I mean that's where you get into the board. Like I see it as
Yeah.
a area, not a map. Like a map, I see
Yeah,
continents or whatnot.
I personally avoid the entire terminology dudes on a
Right.
map game. It's like, yeah, well, I mean, that's what all games are, man. Like all of them are dudes on a map. Which one isn't that? Tic-tac-toe? Like
Wingspan, eggs on a map, eggs on a card.
those eggs are dudes. Those cards are those cards are dudes too. And you put the cards in the different areas on
Yeah.
your little map. I mean, like really, you can
Yeah.
break
Oh,
down
yeah.
almost every single board game. There's a path to justifying calling it dudes on a map.
Yeah,
It's just
and I
like-
know a lot of people get
But-
caught up in like what are games, and I
Yeah.
only look at this part of what a game is, so I get an idea of okay, that's something I like, and I don't get caught up in the. I mean,
Specific jargon.
right?
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that deserves a little bit of attention is that there's a little bit too much polarization for people about what they call something one way or another.
Like I would not call Scythe area control.
Scythe-
At the root of it, like
so-
I get it is, so it's like okay, I get that, but
Well, I mean, Scythe is like almost any other modern board game where it's going to be a hybrid.
oh yeah,
You know, Scythe has an element of area control. It absolutely does.
Right.
You know, but that doesn't
if you play with
necessarily-
the right group. If you play with the other
ele-
type of group that plays Scythe, it has nothing to do with the map. It has to do with
the
only
element.
your
No,
board.
the element is always there. It's just that if you're not playing for that, the areas that you start out controlling can be the only ones that you control throughout the whole game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are a couple of your favorite area control or area majority or area influence really, let's just call it area control for the sake of simplifying the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
But what about you, Russ? What is one of your favorite area control games?
Favorite? I have two
Or
to discuss.
you know what have you brought to the table?
All right.
What do you want to talk about, Russ? Whether it's your favorite or not. How about we start with your least favorite one?
What's controlling your list here?
I've
Your
got
list
two.
of two.
Right? We wanted a list of two. I will. One of the first one I'll talk about is Roar because it's a little bit different area control. I think area controls in general have some sort of randomness in it, and I've heard people complain about Roar with the randomness, which doesn't make sense to me. But the randomness is a different part of the game, whereas a lot of randomness in a combat or area control game has to do with like dice rolling or maybe card play.
Right.
Roar, it has to do with the reproduction phase, right?
Okay.
So there's a lot of different aspects to roar. You have lions. There's a map of Africa. You have lions, lionesses. One of your actions is you can reproduce. You roll the dice, see how many babies you have. Then you take,
Just like real life.
right. You just it's a roll the dice, and then you take the bag and you pull out 2 little cardboard pieces or whatever, however many babies. You put them face down. You can look at what sex they are, and then the next round they'll age into cubs, and then the next round they'll age into your meeples, like lion meeples. But the area control part of it, it's a different type of strategy because it's all based on strength of your pride. It's not like I'm going to attack you and we're going to roll dice and see who actually wins the fight. If my pride is bigger and I have more ancestry strength, it's called, then I am either going to push you out, and that's if I attack, or I can roar because my pride is bigger and I can just take one of your meeples and it turns into my meeple.
Okay.
So it's a lot more strategy based on that, and it's one of those games. The more people know it, the better it is because it's
Right.
really cutthroat, like really cutthroat. And last time I played, I got really upset because I was crushing, and I controlled most of Africa, and my son was down and
Oh,
just
yeah.
started Ticket to Riding it, right? Because there is the aspect, the same as Ticket to Ride, where you have cards that if you fulfill things, like if you go into Zimbabwe, you can play the card and you get 2 points at the end of the game.
Right.
And he did that because he was out of any other options. And me and the other player were at the top of Africa, and he was able to get these cards down low and just happened to pull the right ones. And I was really mad after. I was like, oh man, you broke the game. Now but I started thinking about it, and I was like, well, he was basically like, if you're looking at like area control, he was out of the game
Yeah.
2 rounds into it, because if you get pushed out where your cubs are, like if you get pushed out, your cubs all die. So he got pushed out and lost like 8 cubs. It was a travesty.
Brutal.
Right? So he lost all his reproduction, and so he would have been taken out of the game, and we forgot about him, so we allowed him to just kind of take those cards and get those points. It was more back on us letting him go about doing that. But it's very much heavy strategy with how big your pride is, because your pride in each area can only be so big. But if you move that pride, you have to leave some behind.
Yeah.
So it weakens it. Are you going to lose that territory? And then at the end of each round, you have to feed all of your lions, or some of them are going to starve. And each territory has an amount of food that you get. So there's just
Have you
a
played
lot of
that one, Ken?
strategy.
Nope.
You haven't played Roar?
No, I haven't.
It
So-
sounds
I
kind
have-
of interesting.
I've managed to, as he was talking about how the whole game is about reproduction, not follow everything he said with, if you know what I mean.
So
It was a struggle. It really was.
it's another beautiful art game with animals. So it was kind of sucker. It's not rated very high on Board Game Geek. I don't know why. I really enjoy it. It's designed by Daryl Andrews and Erica Boyaris,
See, that's one thing about
and it's an
designers.
IDW game.
It's often like they almost have the pseudonyms, you know? It's like they're making up the most challenging Cthulhu-esque name for us to try to pronounce.
And I
No.
really do think that some of the issue with it is that people have the problem with the reproduction, because if you reproduce the male lions, they're not as good as the female lions, because the male lions take food, the female lions take food, but they also get an extra food, kind of thematic to lion prides. So there's randomness there. There's randomness with the cards that you can, that Ticket to Ride action. but there's so much strategy in the sense that I'm not wiping you out unless I corner you. I'm not wiping you out. I'm just kind of pushing you back.
Yeah.
The fact that I can just take lions from you, like it's different strategy, and I'm not sure some people are giving it enough plays to really figure some of that stuff out. So I love it. And going back to one of our conversations, I love to play the Lion King when we play this one. So the soundtrack,
The Circle of Life.
So,
well, what about you, Ken? What's the first one on your list of area control games that stand out?
For me, I'm going to start with what I feel is regarded by many as like a modern classic, and that is Kemet.
Okay, yeah.
So Kemet is like you all start the same, but you're like technically you're different factions, and each color has its own unique like warrior guys, which is really cool. Considering
asymmetrical.
No, you start off perfectly symmetrical, but they look different. Like each color has its own sculpt, which is just a really cool little touch.
Nice.
And there's like different art for the player boards, but you start off the exact same. But as you play, it becomes more and more asymmetric because you are part of what you're doing is getting these different power abilities, and some of them have monsters, and they build you up into something unique, and you can play for your own you can play towards your own style or your own strategy or whatever. The game is extremely combat heavy. If you you score more points for attacking and winning, and I want to say you don't even score points if you defend unless you have a special power token, power tile that might give you bonus points for defending, but it's very much about attacking and building up your unique powers, which fall into like they're color coded. So you've got the blue power token. Power abilities are defensive generally. The red power abilities are aggressive generally. And the unfortunately named white power tokens, which they are called that, are also unfortunately more of like control and utility.
A little on the nose there.
Yeah, one of the white power tiles is called slavery.
Oh.
I know it's but so the game comes from Madigo, so it's a French thing, and I feel like it's kind of a little bit lost in translation / difference of culture, you know, but
or historical. Not that it's actually like.
Yeah, I mean there's also a historic precedence, but I'm inclined to believe that in the instance of the game, it's more of just a lost in translation type of thing.
Sure.
I hope that's what it is.
Right.
But the game itself, so you move into someone's territory, and you have your force against their force. So there's the numbers aspect, and then if you have any monsters from a power tile, there's their effect. And then the way that like the nuts and bolts of combat, instead of rolling a bunch of dice at each other, everyone has a hand of, I want to say it's 7 different like tactic cards.
Okay.
That each do a thing, and you play 2. There's one that you're going to play for the round, then you have to discard 1. And they don't come right back into your hand, so you've got to think about what you're doing and when you're battling so that you can use your hand of cards the best. Once you've discarded all of them, you draw them back into your hand. But you don't just get them right back. So those options are somewhat limited. And if I see that you just attacked Russ and you threw down a card that would be the ideal thing to defend against me, I can exploit that weakness.
Jump on that.
There's like teleport areas around the board, so everyone is really close to each other. It's like combat. It is a crazy combat heavy game.
So just so you know, I was going to tell you this today anyway, so this is good. The rules have been updated.
Yeah,
1.5, you can get on BGG. I just double checked. If you go into forums and search
Yeah, it just
1.5 rulebook, the new rulebook is out. You can download and PDF it.
yeah.
I don't know what changed. It's a great game.
They just got that fully translated to English like the other day.
Yeah.
The French version has been out for a couple of weeks now, and I believe it was this week they came out with the English version. And I want to download it and check it out. I've also got the expansions that I've yet to play with. One of them, the first one adds black power tiles and abilities, and I'm not sure exactly what they do. And then there's also this other whole separate track of like you've got a preacher or priest or whatever that's like going on an adventure and unlocking more abilities or something.
Interesting.
And then there's another the newer expansion that came out called I believe that I've heard it pronounced Set, but it looks like the word Scythe.
Yeah.
So whatever. And that one turns the game into an like a one versus many. So you've got all of the regular color guys going after the purple Scythe faction that's like the god of gods. Because
cool.
each of the factions you're supposed to be following a god, but they all kind of start off as equal, whatever.
Right.
If you haven't played Kemet, Tyler, we should definitely do that because
it's been over a year since I played it because I just checked my app.
It's been a while since I've played it, and I've only played it a small handful of times, but every time I play it, it's so aggressive that it scratches a different itch. And like, I mean, I can play other games aggressively, but nothing rewards aggression and nothing encourages aggression quite like Kemet does.
Cool.
And it's a blast. It's just, and another thing with the with the battles where you're laying down the cards, there's also smaller cards that have abilities, and you can like sleight of hand a second ability into your thing. So it's like, all right, I'm doing the +2 to my attack, but I've also got this little card that bolsters my defense, so you're not going to kill my guys.
Right.
And it's really cool adding that little sleight of hand element into it.
Well, it's in my wish list on Amazon, as well as Cyclades or Cyclade, if you want to be
Cyclades
that way. Yeah. But yeah,
is that like version 2.0 or just
it's in the
different
trio.
samey
It's
users?
supposed to be a trio of games
Okay.
within
What's the third one?
similar publishers.
I know
Inish?
those two. What's the third one?
Inish.
Oh, Inish is the third one.
Yeah, so
I want that trio, all of them.
So
I do
Kemet
too.
is like, and I'm not sure exactly how they view the differences.
Who's they, Ken?
The Illuminati?
You know exactly who they are. It's Matago and the designers of these games. I know that Inish has
I didn't
has
realize
a
Inish
drafting.
was Matago. Is it? I mean, obviously it is, right? Okay.
I believe
anyway.
All right. So I know that like one of them is a drafting game, and then I want to say that Cyclades has like a politic-y type of element to it or something like that. But and like it's not a trio like games that you could put together. It's more of
more of like Blood Rage.
Yes,
Rising
it's kind of
Sun.
similar to that type of a trio.
And
yeah,
Ankh?
and
Unk.
I would say that it sounds like that's an apt comparison. From what I know, I mean, I've only played Kemet and I've only played Blood Rage of all the games that you just named, but there's that like there's a similar heart beating amongst the trio.
Yeah, that's
good.
a good way to put it. So I had a hard time putting together a couple of games that stood out for me within this category, simply because I really haven't played many of these games, and most of the ones that I have played, I've only played once. These games don't land as well for me at home because my family doesn't like confrontation for the most part.
Well,
but
and
I do
know
like
there's a
them.
couple of you in this house that are pretty competitive, so I could kind of see the nature of these type of games being a bit of a problem.
But I do. I like them. I think that there are a couple that stood out with the one time that I did play them, like Mission Red Planet, Cthulhu Wars, and Inish, as well as a couple of plays of Root that I owned for a little while. But I just haven't had the opportunity to really sink my teeth into any of those games enough to say that they're my favorite or that I'm dying to get them to the table again right away. But I it doesn't mean that I don't want to. I know that I've got The Godfather that I was looking up, and it kind of fell into this category as well. And I think that's one that I would like to
That'd
try
be a
out as well.
majority control for sure, because you're trying to control the areas, and then you get the benefit at the end of a round.
Yeah, and it's got that. Like,
it is more so than Root.
yeah,
like,
well, see,
I will argue Root all day, because if I have one person and this is an area control game, then I'm out. I got some of those factions have one.
But that's part of how asymmetric Root is. It is an area control game.
It's not area control
for the cats and for the lizards. It is an area control game for them, and perhaps to a lesser degree the Woodland Alliance. It is an action programming game for the birds, even if they need to control areas, which they do. But really, the game is an action, like an
action programming
programming
type thing.
game. And with the Vagabond, I still don't know exactly what he's doing. Is he set collecting?
He's vagabonding.
He's vagging and bonding. And
I have played him once. I almost won, but I can't remember.
I haven't.
Much.
I want to. That one seems like the most unique, and I don't quite know what's going on with the River Otters aside from their mobile pawn shop, and I don't know exactly what that mechanic would be called, but they're
warmongering. They're selling.
I guess, but they're whatever. But there for certain factions, it is an area control game. But the cool thing about how radically asymmetric Root is that the Root is not an area control game. But playing as the Marquise de Cat is an area control game. Yeah, I
can see that. But we digress.
Yeah, we just. What do you got, Tyler? What are you bringing to the table?
Well, I actually only brought one to the table simply because it's the only game that I felt like I had enough experience playing, and Russ already shit on that one, but I'm going to bring it up anyway.
What was that one?
I think the only game that falls into either category that I have played enough and have somewhat of a valuable opinion is Scythe. And I've had the chance to play Scythe over 20 times now, including the entire Rise of Fenris campaign. And the reason that I liked Scythe as much as I did and had as much fun, I think it has more to do with the people that I've played with along the way. And, they're the people that taught me the game. And after playing a couple of times with them, I ended up buying everything short of the overpriced promos. But I think
you'll get them at some point.
The Rise of, eventually
we all
when they
say
drop.
We're not going to, but you do.
But I think the Rise of Fenris campaign helped me really like the game more too, because of the execution of unfolding those boxes and that you sit and open throughout the whole thing, and they incorporated all the contents of those within the story so well that it just continued to draw me in. But I'm happy to argue that it is area control, because
there's not much of an
argument. The point of the game
for me now
is to control tons of areas.
Yeah, but see, the first time I played it
that way,
nobody did it.
Well,
so
because
we couldn't
the first
even
time that you played it
with to anyone.
A bunch of kids that shit the bed.
Yeah, you weren't playing Kemet.
I would say that after our play, I much more see it as area control. Like, you have Mechatol Rex there in the middle that you got to get to, right?
Yeah.
It definitely borrows things from a lot of other more steadfast area control games.
It's
a lot of the
game.
Design.
Yeah,
it's a good game.
A lot of modern games borrow.
But
I will say, for the record, when I see a good deal on Scythe, I actually think about buying it now. If you would have told me that 3 months ago, I would have laughed at you. I would have burned the game because I disliked it that much. But our last play was really enjoyable.
Well, I'm happy because it's in my top 5, and I with the area control aspect of it, I do think that with that game, you almost never win if you have 3 hexes that you control. You've got to expand, and you've got to push others out of those areas. You have to engage in combat, or at least kick the workers out, and you may lose popularity in that way, but it's you need the expansion in order to gather those points.
But see, I realized, probably for me, the biggest thing that helped me realize in the last play, the area control part of it is, because there is a risk going into things, and Jamie Stegmaier tends to make that in games because he doesn't love combat in that way. But I can't remember what my faction was, but when Zach had all those resources, and I could have backdoored in, I was like, like a light kind of went on of some options in that game that I did not know existed, because that would have been a great move, but I know that would have ruined the game for Zach.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to do
well,
that.
in the one faction...
Isn't that the goal?
The one
if
it
he
is
had
now.
played before, because I didn't want him to hate the game based on one play like I did.
Like
Right. That's
you
admirable.
and Zach did to Ashley?
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty funny. I looked at Ashley, I was like, oh man, I was that last time I played this game.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Well, the one faction that we didn't use is...
Yeah, I want to play that one.
Yeah, that's your combat faction. That's the one that, you can only get 2 stars for combat for successfully winning combat in that game throughout any and every other faction. Whereas Saxony lets you, if you just go combat, you get 6 stars for combat. There's no limit to how many you can get. So that's the one that encourages the hell out of
But I don't know if
interaction
you need,
like that.
even for territory control, I don't know if I need combat in my games. Like last time we played Cthulhu Wars, I was driving away, I was like, I don't think I fought once that entire game.
Yeah, but your faction didn't really.
No, but I was
need
really
it
enjoying
or
what I was
lend
doing.
to
I
it.
was doing tons of strategy, but it
Right.
wasn't like I've got to
See,
fight.
and that's where, like, the faction that you were playing, it wasn't about area control or area majority. It was about area influence.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, there's an element of all of that, but that they should all be mixed in to some degree.
Yeah.
I think so too, and I think just to call
I-
it a blanket term of area control, it's
Thinking back on
Easier
it,
to-
I don't know if I ever did
to
combat in
swallow.
Scythe. I moved around a lot. I spread out. I controlled some areas.
yeah. I don't
Which
know if
which
you did
which
either.
is important, right?
Yeah, I felt
Because-
it was important.
See, in the last play I had, and I don't want to keep pooping on that play, but nobody moved. Like I could see people across the way,
Yeah.
and I had plans to go there, and then they were like, "Oh, I triggered end game. It's over." I was like, "But
Yeah.
I'm on 3 hexes, and the game just started.
And-
This seems like it should be an epic game because of the art and amazingness, and it's too short, and I don't like it."
I definitely admit that sounds like a stale ass play
Yeah.
of the game and a stale way to play it. And
Yeah.
that's not the way that I ever plan on engaging in it, but as much of it being an option, I think that's cool. It's not going to be my
see,
style of play or my pick, but
I hear about that, and the more like games that I play and diversifying the group and playing with different people, I think to myself, it's just about your group meta, and
Oh, yeah.
for the same reason that it didn't happen when you play it again is the same reason that it was boring when it happened the first time, and
Yep.
that's because we have a generally aggressive, combat heavy,
Yeah.
and confrontational group of people.
Yeah.
Before we move on from Scythe, you said that the combat heavy faction is called
Saxony?
Saxony.
yeah.
So would you play the old what was it, exploited song, Saxon Violence, if you're playing with them? Right?
I think that seems pretty right up their alley. Yeah, they're essentially the Germans. So yeah,
All
sure.
I mean, there's a lot of good music to play with Scythe.
Yeah, there is. What's next up on your list, Russ?
So I have one honorable mention I want to mention before I talk about my favorite, easily my favorite.
Okay.
But that is Cry Havoc is my honorable mention. And I mention it because it's has some other interesting things. You can play it 2 players, but then there's a mod, like there's
like a bot.
a bot that plays a faction, and the combat is very different. You have to use your miniatures. There's 3 actions we'll call them actions that take place in a combat, and you place your miniatures based on what you are going to allot to each. So timing of those really influences everything, and it's quite interesting. It's a fun game. It's that Cry Havoc. It looks like Halo. Every time I think of Halo, but it's a fun interesting combat game.
I have that
more
one.
strategy.
I've yet to play it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It looks cool.
It's good. But my favorite area control combat, whatever you want to call it, is Chaos in the Old World. That's by Eric Lang, Fantasy Flight. It's an old Warhammer game, and I know there's IP issues, so
man, I hope it gets reprinted.
Yeah, it's out of print currently. I'm not going to say it's inexpensive to get on the aftermarket, but
because
I will say
a lie. It's extremely expensive to get on the aftermarket.
If you wait and you find it, I will say that I have found 2 copies, including the expansion, and I've spent a total of $90.
That's pretty awesome.
And I sold one of those.
What does generally speaking, what does the expansion go for by itself? If you just pull it up on eBay
like
right now,
$150 to $200.
I know, dude.
That's
It's
a
so
tiny box.
ridiculous.
That's a tiny ass
Okay,
box.
I
for
will
that
say
much.
this though. That expansion adds more to a game than any expansion that I have, because it comes with a faction and it comes with a new set of cards
That make it
for
impossible
every
to
faction.
play.
The
The-
chaos cards, the
Yep.
rune cards that it adds are super difficult.
Yeah, the one time that I played with the Horned Rat, there was one card that it felt like it took all the wind out of everyone's sails except Russ's.
Well,
Yeah,
so
that was my
there
first and
are
only
like
play.
6 or 7 cards in that rune deck that, depending on when they come out, they will benefit one faction. Not one specific all the time, but they all. I went back and looked at them. Like, they drastically changed the game. Had that one that came out that we played come out at a different time, it wouldn't have affected so much. So that's another part of the game that I really like, is that those cards really impact things.
Yeah.
So this is, if you like Blood Rage, Rising Sun, which is another honorable mention. I love Rising Sun, even though I haven't played it much. I'm almost done painting it so I can play mine often. It is the grandfather to those games.
Right.
I hope that this game will get reprinted, even reskinned, to do something, because it has great mechanics. When you're talking about area control aggression, this game forces aggression. You have a map that is a map of human skin that kind of winds around. So there's a trail to it. It doesn't look that way before you know what it is, but there's a trail to it. And
A happy trail?
sure,
Not usually.
You said it was human skin.
you pay resources. You pay resources to put guys on the map wherever you want to put at the beginning, but then they have to be in an area. You can use those resources to put guys on a map, move guys on the map, or play a card. Each region has 2 cards that influence the region. After playing with the expansion and 5 players, I feel like it's going to be really hard to get to the table with the group with under 5 players, because it's pretty amazing at 5 players, because there is absolute chaos.
In the old world.
Yeah. And then you have dials, right? Each faction, they're very asymmetric, and they're asymmetric in turn order, which, on another subject, route really bothers me that it's so asymmetrical, and turn order and where people sit doesn't matter. And it's probably because I love the way chaos does it. Like, if turn order was different, the red guy Corn would be way outbalanced, more than he is, but it would be a distinct advantage, even more so. So turn order matters, and each dial goes a different way. So you can win by points, or you can win by your win condition, your dial. And oh man, it is good, because after everybody plays all their actions, uses all their points, like rage points and blood rage, then you go through each area, and combat has to happen. And oh man, it's so good. It's the only game that I warn people before, like, feelings are going to get hurt, and just relax. And when we play with our group, who knows it pretty well, so we still argue at the end of every game, and someone just gets their feelings hurt. And they get really mad, and there's like a 45-minute yelling argument match.
That didn't happen last time we played. It depends on which
we
parts
all
of
just
our
hated
group it
Russ
was.
because he was corn and he got the card that
Yeah,
screwed
see?
the rest of the
Yeah.
See,
table.
everybody gets done at the end, and they're like, "Oh, it's dumb. You wouldn't
But-
have won. I would have done this." But I
that,
don't know, because
like,
I would have done different things anyway.
The thing is that had like the way that you won, I almost felt like it didn't even have that much to do with you. It was that one
yeah, but
card
see, that's
that
what
destroyed
bugs me,
us.
because it did.
Because you stacked the deck. Like, I understand that you cheated and made it
No,
so
see,
you
I
win
wish
by
that card
putting
wouldn't
that
have
card
come
in.
out.
Yeah, me too. Then we could have had a chance.
And this is what the game turns into.
Yeah, this is just a small taste.
Yeah.
No,
But it's-
chaos it's amazing.
If you like Eric Lane games and you haven't come across it, I highly suggest you find it just somewhere to play.
Yeah, look around your area, find someone who has it, and throw down on a pretty vicious. Take that.
Oh, yeah.
Aggressive, kind of mean, super crazy fun game.
Yeah. Also understand this. If you find it used and you open it and you're like, "Oh, these minis have all these little flags broken," unless it's new and shrink, you're never going to find those not broken. They're
They're
basically a twig.
Yeah,
So,
the
Poor design.
component quality is not awesome. Like, especially when you think of the fact that that's a Warhammer game. That name means something with every single other product that they put out.
So I was really, I was like, man, I wonder if I could get another map, a bigger map, and then buy Warhammer figures to fill out these armies. People have done it. I looked at the price. It's not happening for me. But
Not yet.
Yeah.
Russ.
it's
Especially
a great game.
with legit Warhammer figures.
But
man.
even if you get the
Yeah.
expansion, I would, if you're not really experienced or you don't want the cards to play a major factor in the game, then take out the ones that come with the expansion, because they really increase. So basically, all players can lose. It's not a co-op game in any sense of the word, but if the entire map gets ruined, like, everybody loses. So those cards play a role in the sense that with the expansion, they were like, we're going to make the game harder, not like harder within each other. And like I said, a lot of those cards break the game for other people. And depending when they come out, they can just wreck it for everyone.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what's last on your list, Kenneth?
You know, honestly, probably the best game that I could really kind of go on and on about is Cthulhu Wars, and that's probably not a surprise to anyone who's listened to our show. But really, that game in so many ways is similar to Chaos in the Old World, that I'm not gonna sit here and talk and
come
I've
on,
talked
there's
about
9-player or 11-player version.
Yeah.
I'm excited to play.
No, I mean, like, I love Cthulhu Wars. It's probably my favorite game, but I mean, it's another asymmetric game. There's different ways of scoring. It's got amazing minis. It's big, huge. It's a like total excess game that you can get all kinds of extra plastic for. But
I just picked up the God's War. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I've talked about Cthulhu Wars on this show, I think more than once, and I feel like it's a little too similar to jump right back in after Chaos in the Old World, and because that's the game that I feel like I'm the most qualified for, instead I'm gonna kind of touch on a handful of them. Basically, just a handful of honorable mentions rather than handing out the award as it would be,
Right.
So one of them that kind of jumped to my mind, and I wish that I had a little bit more experience actually playing it and could talk about it more than I am about to is Ethnos. Ethnos is a
Such a good
really
game.
cool, very much in the area majority camp because you're just stacking discs and then you've got your little cards that you pick up, kind of Ticket to Ride style, and they can add different abilities. And at the end of each age, you score all your different areas with your little like posse abilities from the cards. Pretty simple game, pretty user friendly,
Great
pretty cheap,
gateway game.
really good gateway game, and solid area majority. It's a really fun game.
So with that in mind, I wanted to ask, and I'm glad you brought that one up because it reminded me of how would you gauge cult? Because would you consider that any sort of area majority as far as like
If you want to start splitting hairs, you could call every single worker placement area like area control because you're controlling an area that does a thing and no one else can get in there.
I just mean as
But
far as like the way that auction mechanism works.
yeah, the
It
way
kind
that
of
that
feels that
auction
way.
mechanism is, it has an element of that area majority mixed in with just being a straight up worker placement, and with like that one I like. It comes to mind in the conversation for
Cool.
sure, more than any other worker placement game that I've played, anyways.
We need to throw that one down.
Yeah, another one that I really want to play that I haven't yet, and I from what I understand, it's got to be some sort of area control or a majority, is Diplomacy, because I've heard that that is just a friendship ender.
Yeah,
Like
it's another polarizing one.
very much like a long game, lots of deception and lying and underhandedness. I haven't played it. I've heard things about it.
I
really
do
want
love
to
the
play it.
aspect of politics in area control, which is why I was so drawn to the God's War, because it kind of seemed like Cthulhu with maybe some politics in it.
Yeah.
So
Another one that I have yet to play but is sitting on my shelf is Dominant Species
Oh yeah.
from GMT.
I want to play that bad.
That game, like, I think that among the people who are really into the hobby, it is a known game for sure. I think that it would do a lot better if they used more than just cubes and hexes, because it's you're playing different like classes of animals battling each other to be the dominant species. And I feel like if there was any sort of minis, and you can buy like minis made for the game
Yeah.
for a fortune,
I will
because
say
there's a
it-
ton of components in there, but like mechanically I've heard that it's amazing. It just doesn't look that great, and I feel like it would do a lot better and have a better reputation if it looked a little better.
I look at that one and I figure it's got to be an amazing game based on it has such a great reputation. The components aren't great and the art's not amazing. Like, it's not bad. I don't want to make it sound like I'm poo-pooing it, but
Right.
like for the reputation that has, you look at that game, you would not think that it is what
Yeah,
it
it's
is.
one of those things that you know, the mechanics have to be carrying it because no one's buying it for the art.
Yeah.
No one's buying it for the components. You're buying it for the mechanics. Another one that I have and have yet to play is Game of Thrones. And that's another one that has that element of deception and politicking. And that game looks so amazing. And it's just, the problem with that one is, by all accounts, I've heard that you have to have the full complement of 6 to play the base game. And that isn't always easy. And I've heard that it can be a long game, and that makes it more difficult. And I've heard that the most recent expansion, the Mother of Dragons expansion, which adds a faction, it adds, I think it adds two more factions, and it also adds like bots to play as some of the other factions to close the gap for when you have more or less than the full complement. But I still have yet to actually play it. But that's one that I really want to play. I feel like that one would be a really good fit with our group. It can be aggressive. We can be deceptive. There's a lot of fun to be had there, and I really want to get that one to the table. Scrolling down my list here, I feel like there was at least one more that I wanted to kind of touch on.
One that I'm interested in is Dune. It's a new one that, well, I shouldn't say new. It's an old classic.
It's a new game from
But
like
I was
1980
watching
something.
I was watching some stuff on it, and it is very asymmetrical to the sense that it is like one player gets to look at all the cards and know what people are going to draw. One gets all the money that people spend on something. So it's like one of those you'd need to play with a group a few times to figure out exactly how to play it.
Yeah.
Play it well, I should say, as opposed to just going through. So that one's kind of on my radar.
When you mentioned the need for 6 players on Game of Thrones, that's the game that came to mind for me is Dune. That's one thing that I've heard about that is that you need 5 or more players in order for that game to really sail.
Yeah, I have a game on my shelf, Richard the Lionheart, that I could, I think, play with more or less than 6, but it's like, it's so good at 6. Like, I want to play it at 6.
Yeah, so I remembered what game it was that was the last one that I wanted to kind of touch on. And if in our group, if there's one game that is standing in the way of getting Game of Thrones to the table, it's probably Twilight Imperium. And Twilight Imperium, it's very much a 4X, but with any good 4X games, there's going to be that element of area control and area majority. And with Twilight Imperium, it's such an epic game that it's not a huge part of it, except for when it is. And if you're making that run from Ekatal Rex and you either get knocked down or you knock someone off of it before they were able to do whatever their thing was, that can be a huge moment in the game. I would not say that TI is an area control game or even an area majority game, but it's a game of huge moments of area control and area majority and combat over the different areas.
Well, I will say this about TI is I think I was hesitant to jump in. I think our whole group was. I happened to find it on clearance for $23 when TI4 was announced. Still can't believe a store was clearancing for $23 at TI3.
I was absolutely not hesitant. I've always liked the idea of like, but I also was the kid that would, back when I was a kid, I would play Monopoly for 18 hours straight with my cousin. And it turned into really just an endurance match. Like who's going to give up first? Because we're playing by house rules, which ruin Monopoly. So it's never, ever going to end. So it's just like, did you fall asleep? That's why you lost.
That'd be me.
So playing a long game like TI, there's a new one that's coming out that is even longer. It's not from what I understand, it's a civilization building game. It's called Western Empires. I heard a thing on Shut Up and Sit Down about it, and that one's like a up to 9-player game, and you're developing like the civilizations of Western Europe. And I'm sure there's an amount of area control and combat to it, but it sounds like there's just a lot going on, and the estimated time is like 8 to 13 hours, which is just bananas. But like a 9-player game taking 13 hours, everything about that sounds great to me.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with the long games. Like, I mean, Diplomacy I've heard is long. Game of Thrones I've heard is long, but it's hard to get people to play those long games. Yeah. Especially if you need a lot of people.
You just need to tell them to bring a change of clothes, and then that should be good.
If you are hesitant to jump into Twilight Imperium, I would give Twilight Imperium 4 a go. And it has such a reputation for being like this 4X game, but oh man, it scratches so many itches for me. Like it is, I don't want to say any game is perfect, but there are so many things about that game that I love. I love the exploration, the tiles, the politics, everything about that game is amazing. And I like Arkham Horror. I've played a 3-hour game of Arkham Horror that felt 3 times as long as my 8-hour play of Twilight Imperium. Yeah. And I like both games, but Twilight Imperium, you are constantly doing stuff. And for me, even when it's not your turn, it doesn't feel like there's downtime because you have to pay attention what everybody's doing. And Oh man, it's such a good game.
Yeah, I would also say if you have any interest in Twilight Imperium, but you're afraid to like make the leap or make the purchase of buying, $100 TI4, uh, if you live in anything remotely resembling a city, I can say with almost no doubt there is someone that has Twilight Imperium that desperately wants someone to sit down and play, like to commit to the 8 hours to play it.
Yeah.
Because we're fortunate enough that we have a pretty good sized group, depending on the week, but we've got a good sized group of people who are willing to set aside that time. And, that's a game that we decide beforehand. We're going to play it this coming week and we sort of set it up. But if you make an event out of it, whether it be with your group or if you get on Reddit or a Facebook page or Craigslist, whatever.
I'm pretty
However
sure
it is that you find random people to do stuff with, you could almost definitely find someone in your area that has TI4 that's trying to get it to the table or has a group that would let you come and play with them. Any version of that, like if committing to owning it is holding you back from playing it and you're curious about it, there's ways to get past that one especially, because that game is so about, if infamous might be the word. I mean, it's something like that. Like, it's not like it's infamous for being bad, but it's got such a reputation and such clout, and it's in such an esteemed and well-regarded position in the community.
I will say this, strategy-wise, you, just as a point, if you've never played, do not go into the game and get a lead. Just don't. Do not do it. Do not rush out to thinking you're going to score a bunch of points.
But yeah, and again, TI4, we're supposed to be talking about area majority and area control, and it is not that, but it's got a...
Well, just in the sense of Mechatol Rex is a huge aspect to the game.
It can be a crucial part of the game.
Yeah. So, well, let's discuss a little bit about the history, and we'll wrap things up with a top 10 on area control games, according to BGG. So, what do you guys think was the first area control game, and
Risk.
when do you think it was published?
1957.
Oh, wow. He's like, did you research this?
No, I know.
Oh, okay.
Was that right?
Well, Kenneth has to throw a guess in there first.
I feel like it shouldn't be Risk. Like, is it Risk? It's Risk, isn't it? It shouldn't be Risk.
Unless there's a military game that was out before that. Because you would... Well, hold on. So, Risk is the first mainstream.
He's talking himself out of this.
Risk is the first mainstream, but there may have been war games before then. I'm going to stick to Risk, though. But there could have been...
I know that Diplomacy is super old, too. I don't think it's old enough to outdate Risk, but I think Diplomacy came out in the 50s also.
So, this one was quite a bit harder for me to pin down as far as the official first area control game, because there were a handful of other games claiming to be area control from the 1500s and 1800s, but they didn't really feel much like the area control that we're actually talking about tonight, so take it for what it is, I guess, or don't. But the first one that I found that sort of hit or scratched the itch of what we were discussing tonight is a game called The Philippine War. And
war game.
I feel like I've heard of this game before.
It was one of 4 war games introduced in 1898 by Parker Brothers, themed around the Spanish-American War. All 4 were action-based games involving the players shooting wooden bullets at die-cut soldiers using handheld spring-loaded cannons. And although
it was a dexterity game.
Yeah, it wasn't really a commercial success.
That's kind of wild.
The series of these 4 games contributed greatly to Parker Brothers' image as a patriotic American company.
Huh.
The first 3 games in this series were The War in Cuba, The Siege of Havana, and The Battle of Manila. So,
that's like when you said that there was games from the 1500s that claimed it. I was like, oh shit! Of course, people like. There's 2 things that people have been doing since the dawn of time, and that's breathing and killing each other. So, with the combat intensive nature of area control games, it's not surprising to think that there are primitive games that would fit into that box, even if they don't fit perfectly with what we think of today. Combat is one of the very few things we as a species have been doing since we first stood up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's go down the top 10s here, but let's see what do you guys think is the number 1 area control game?
We're going to start 1 back up.
Now, I'm going to go 10 down, but we're just going to have you guess what number 1 is, kind of like we did last time. What do you think the number 1 area control game on BGG?
Part of me wants to, there's a part of me that feels like this is one of those situations where I feel like the community might put Scythe there.
I'm leaning
but I don't want to say Scythe because I don't think that it should be Scythe, and I'm gonna go off. I don't.
Let me just say this is really fun for me.
I'm gonna say, I think I'm wrong here.
Me
but
too.
I'm gonna go with Blood Rage.
I'm going to say, honestly, I'm kind of torn between either Kemet or Inish. I feel like it's going to be one of those two.
So I don't know how BGG works here, right? Because
No one does.
If they're
That's
number
the beauty of
one,
it.
right? But if it's number 1 on,
It's part of the fun.
if it's number 1 on overall, does that mean it's automatically number 1 on area control? If that makes sense.
It's not an area control
Right,
game,
but if it's
Russ.
an area control, like Scythe is a highly rated game, I think it's in the top 10. And if it has the area control listed on it, does that mean it automatically goes? Like, is Gloomhaven number 1 across all
of its subcategories? I have no idea.
I don't know as far as that goes. I don't think you'll be surprised to find out what it is. It's Twilight Struggle.
Yeah.
It was the number 1 for quite a while on BGG
one-
overall.
Yeah, that's a game that I haven't played.
I haven't either.
Yeah.
But
I don't
again,
have a huge
it wasn't
interest
really-
in it. I think it's amazing for what it is, but
Yeah.
I don't want to play a 2-player area control, although I do love Star Wars Risk, so I can't say.
So, number 10 is Root.
Yeah, see,
This is fun because it's gonna ruffle a lot of feathers here.
it's too asymmetric for that, and like
It's got
if you
elements
have-
of it.
it does, but if you have a faction that has nothing to do with that, then you can't say the game is based on that. That's
no,
my.
but
if I
we're
have
not
one
saying that these are
meeple-
based on area control. They're just area control games, elements of it.
But,
See, the thing is,
but if I can win the game without ever worrying about area control,
But
I
you-
get
you
what people
can't.
say, but if
you can't win the game without worrying about area control, because
you
if
have to
you're not
destroy the
worrying about
area.
area control, then the cats win it by default because of their area control.
no, but
you
a
don't have
vagabond
to-
does nothing with it. The
You don't-
vagabond does nothing.
but you don't have to engage in the area control for it to still be an important part of the game. And I've never played the vagabond, so I don't really know what they're doing, and I feel like you shouldn't count them.
This is the one.
They don't fight
This is the
anyone.
one game I will argue is not because I have a faction with one meeple. One meeple.
Yeah, but that one meeple is obviously they're not going to win by area, like controlling more
And
areas.
nobody has the same
but-
amount of meeples in that game.
But they're not going to win if they just let everyone else.
I'm going to be an
control
old
the
Krabby
areas that they
Patty
want.
here, and I'm just going to say I don't agree with that.
That's fine. You're wrong.
It's dudes on a map, and so people think it's area control.
Everything's dudes on a map. We went over this earlier.
And damn near everything can be somewhat area control too.
Damn right. The entire genre of worker placement is area control.
So number 9 is Eclipse. Haven't played it yet, so I don't know much about that one.
Wow, this is an interesting list.
Yeah, that's another one that's similar to TI, where there's an element of area control, and it can absolutely create some big moments. I've only played Eclipse the one time.
I really enjoy Eclipse.
It was cool. I liked it a lot.
Did I tell you about the time?
But there's so much more to it. Like to put it in that box, it feels like
Yeah.
you're really like shaving off a lot of really cool stuff to call it an area control
Did-
game.
Did I tell you about the time we were at? I don't know if you were playing with us. We at SaltCon. We love to play this. Jared brings his decked out version. We play 9-player Eclipse. It takes long. We were like 6 hours in, and there's like 1 or 2 in the morning, and like Jared flipped something behind, and then this guy walks by and throws it back, and it lands in the middle of the table and nearly wiped out our whole game. Like I almost grabbed my pants. Like I was like, we are 6 hours in and we are just gonna wipe this out because some guy walked by and threw something. Like, I was not happy. Luckily we were able to establish everything, but it was like, oh, that was so bad. Kind of funny in a way, but so cruel. So don't walk by people at a convention and just throw something.
Yeah, that was not the game that I played. When I played, I had this super cool thing going where I had a more combat heavy faction and I was positioned neighboring Zach's like totally non-combat faction. And I immediately had a good solid alliance with Zach that felt secure. We were going to help each other out. We weren't going to mess with each other. And all this while, Zach apparently had a Cold War going on with me because he was just waiting for me to just turn on him and wipe him out. He was like, any minute now.
Now that
like the entire game, Zach was going, Kenneth is going to wipe me out.
Now that you're talking about that play, it makes me realize where people are coming from on the territory control, or because you don't need planets, right? You just need space hexes, and you want those space hexes to control pathways and stuff. So I can definitely see it.
No, it's an element, but there's a lot more to it. If I want to play an area control game, I'm not going to go with Eclipse or Twilight Imperium.
Right.
But that's not to say that those aren't
the new map.
That's an important part of
the new map Jared just got is. There's only one game mat I think that's ever going to be bigger, and that's the 11-player Chaos or Cthulhu Wars map.
Yeah.
This new Eclipse map is giant. It's pretty amazing.
We could see if we could get a custom made campaign for North Africa map. It's like 10 feet long or something.
Yeah. The Eclipse mat sounds like something that Kenneth might be able to drape over him the way that I imagine you would want to.
Jared did kind of wrapped it up like a blanket.
So number 8 is Blood Rage.
Yeah.
Number 7, Spirit Island.
Really?
Interesting. That's a co-op.
A co-op area. I have Spirit Island. I have yet to play it because that's what I do. I own games and don't play them.
You're not alone.
Yeah, I know. That said, I kind of wondered if Spirit Island would fall into that because I know that there's like areas around the island and you're repelling the invading forces. To me, like I got Spirit Island partly because of the rave reviews in general, and I'm down with a co-op game, and especially like with co-op games you can always play it solo, and it seemed like it would be a cool game. But to me, I look at that and I go, all right, that from everything that I've heard, that is what I want Pandemic to be.
Yeah.
So that's why I got Spirit Island. But from what I understand of it, I can see where that would be an area control game.
It's one I haven't played, but I've heard nothing but good things about it. So it's definitely on my interest list.
So far in this list, we've had a 2-player game and a co-op game.
And a card drafting game.
Yeah. Number 6 is War of the Ring. And I haven't played that, but I heard it's great.
Yeah, I haven't played it.
Number 5 is Scythe.
There it is.
I thought it'd be a little higher.
It's right in the middle.
Yeah.
Number 4, Gaia Project.
Really?
I did not know that wasn't even an element to that game.
Yeah, see, that's another game that I haven't played. Really want to.
I mean, basically, can we say that about everything on these lists?
No.
Nope.
I don't have War of the Ring.
Are you sure?
Yes.
It could be in there somewhere.
No, there's War of the Ring is a game that's blessed with a property that
Okay,
I'm
so
just not into. So
based on this list,
yeah,
I'm going to predict that Rebellion is going to be in the top 3.
yeah. I don't know.
Number
That's
3.
another wait. Oh yeah. So Gaia Project was number 4. Gaia Project. I like from everything that I've heard, I wouldn't have guessed that was an area control. I mean,
I didn't know it was
I can
even
see
a
where
piece
there's
to it.
I can
I don't
sort
know
of
a
see
ton
where there's a
about it,
piece
but-
because you're trying to get planets and you're like terraforming multiple planets and stuff. So I guess if you've got the bigger
Yeah.
area of more planets, maybe. But having not played it, I can't really speak to a whole lot of it.
Isn't it essentially Terra Mystica in space?
Yes, it is Gaia Project, a Terra Mystica game.
Yeah.
So number 3, Twilight Imperium.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
So I think it is based on where it is on the list.
Maybe.
Number 2, Star Wars Rebellion.
Yeah. See, so it is based on where they are in the list. Those are all top games. Rebellion is Star Wars in a box, and I've heard amazing things about it.
So have I. I'm not a big Star Wars fan. I mean, the movies are alright, like Kenneth mentioned in another episode, but it's just nothing that's really ever reached out and grabbed me.
I mean, based on how much I love Star Wars Risk, which is a remake of The Queen's Gambit, Star Wars Risk is a great 2-player game. Don't think of it like Risk. Rebellion, if it's a better detailed version of that, like, I want it. So
The minis are better, I think.
yeah. Well, it's also more of a investment in time.
Oh, yeah.
I have a friend that I play Star Wars Risk with, and it's turned into almost kind of like a chess type strategy. Like, I know what you're going to do this time, so I'm going to do this, as opposed to like a play of something you haven't played before.
Yeah.
Very strategic 2-player.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I honestly I don't think I could be less interested in Star Wars Rebellion. That's not to say that if someone got it and was like, "Hey, let's play this," I'd be down to give it a try because I always am, but I just could not care any less about Star Wars.
Yeah. Big epic 2-player games, that's the one that's on my list. Like, I would like that one.
And
I think you can play it 4, but let's be honest, it was built as a 2-player.
Yeah. And just to summarize, Twilight Struggle was number 1. As far as the top
So
10 according to
Cold
BGG.
War, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So obviously this episode was somewhat controversial in the way that things are ranked or perceived by the individual playing or in some cases not playing.
So if I would say, like, I mean, if we were to compare this to the last time we did this segment, this format of a segment was worker placement. And worker placement is a lot easier to define than
Yeah, it's a little more black and white.
than
Yeah.
area control is. Area control, so many games have an element of it. And like I said, I mean, if you really like, there's a valid argument to be made for every worker placement is an area control game.
Yeah.
Because every time you place down a worker, you are controlling that area, and for that turn, generally speaking, no one else can. So that goes to show the vast nature and interpretive nature of this category. So it's going to be more controversial and more nebulous.
I thought of
just by
a lot
nature.
about this looking into it, because what is the purpose of the control, right? Like, Chaos in the Old World, it's strictly about just controlling and being the warmonger that controls the most territory, in a sense. Not always, but in a sense. In Scythe, it's about resources type of thing. To that extent, I think you could also say, like, Catan to an extent, like, I'm controlling, not really controlling, but I have access to those. So I think it depends on what your purpose is. But in the sense that where I have control, I need that area and I need to control that so I get whatever it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, that is a definition, right? Twilight Imperium, Eclipse, or all that, but they're not. What's weird about those, though, is you've got, it's not always the planets. I mean, planets in Twilight Imperium are very important, but it's also pathways to stuff. It's not like that space, that hex that just contains space is very important to have that access.
Yeah, but I mean, a route is a series of areas, so.
Right, but I'm saying I can definitely see where they're coming from on that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, they're games, right? We do them for fun. That it shouldn't cause so much, except for Root,
And
so.
and there goes Russ's heartburn once again.
There it is.
Well, thanks for listening. Please rate and review the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or whatever podcatcher you use. Everywhere definitely helps. You can find us at thelategamepodcast.com and at The Late Game Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as YouTube now, which we're working out some cameras and lighting so that we can actually start sharing video content as well. Thanks again for staying up with The Late Game. It can
be for some factions, but
yeah. No, I understand the argument there.
like the vagabond lives in the freaking woods, man.